Trump came home empty-handed and weakened. And here is where the situation becomes genuinely alarming, because this wasn't simply a failed negotiation. This was professional malpractice at the highest level of statecraft. Any president in any other administration who traveled to meet face-to-face with a foreign counterpart of this magnitude without the diplomatic groundwork being laid in advance, without backroom agreements already sketched out, without a deliverable to bring home to the American people, would face immediate and overwhelming political consequences. Their State Department would be dismantled. Their diplomatic team would be removed. That is how seriously the foreign policy establishment has historically treated this kind of failure. The fact that it is being spun as a success tells you everything you need to know about where American institutional accountability currently stands. Where are you watching from today? If you believe the world is entering a far more dangerous phase of political and global instability, subscribe now because the next major escalation could arrive faster than most people expect. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think China's real strategic calculation is right now, because I want to hear your perspective as we go deeper into this. Now let's talk about what is actually happening beneath the surface, because few people realize how serious this has become. China is not simply a trade competitor or a diplomatic rival. China is actively financing the conflict that is killing Americans. Through a sophisticated network of Hong Kong-based limited liability companies, more than 100 of them, Beijing is enabling the flow of oil revenue, arms, and cash directly to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. These aren't allegations, these are documented financial pathways. Hong Kong traders are running ghost ships through international blockades to keep Iranian oil moving. Hong Kong money brokers are channeling funds into Iranian military operations. Hong Kong arms dealers are replenishing the very drones and weapons systems being used against American forces in the region. And not one element of this network was meaningfully addressed during Trump's visit to Beijing. Not one. The Treasury Department has been making noise about an operation they're calling Epic Fury, a package of sanctions targeting a handful of entities and financial institutions. But analysts are increasingly concerned that this is pure theater. You cannot dismantle a 100-entity money laundering network by sanctioning a few banks and calling it a victory. You have to follow the money. You have to pursue the LLCs. You have to go after the brokers, the oil traders, the arms intermediaries. That work is not being done. And as long as it isn't, the Iran conflict will not end, because China holds the financial switch and China has no incentive to flip it. This changes the strategic calculation in ways that most mainstream commentary is not confronting directly. The Iran war is not simply a military conflict between Washington and Tehran. It is at its structural core a proxy confrontation being sustained by Beijing. The Iranians will not sue for peace on American terms. They will end this conflict when their financial lifeline is severed, and that lifeline runs through Hong Kong. China decides when this war ends. Not the U.S. Secretary of State, not the Vice President, not the President. China. And Trump just sat across the table from Xi Jinping and came home without even forcing that conversation into the open. Now add to this the diplomatic optics and the picture becomes even more troubling. When Trump landed in Beijing, he was not greeted by President Xi or his wife. He was met by a lower-level vice president, a calculated, deliberate signal of disrespect from a government that understands protocol and symbolism better than almost any on earth. In Chinese diplomatic culture, that kind of greeting is not an oversight, it is a statement, and it set the tone for everything that followed. The physical chaos that erupted around Trump's team, American handlers being shoved, reporters being locked out of bathrooms and stripped of water bottles, White House staff audibly shouting at Chinese security personnel to keep their hands off them. These are not logistical mishaps. They are a projection of power. China behaved the way it did because it calculated correctly that there would be no meaningful consequences. Think about what that means for a moment. The security detail surrounding a sitting American president was physically manhandled on foreign soil, and at least one American was pushed to the ground. The press corps, which represents the First Amendment, which represents the foundational principle of free democratic society, was locked out, corralled, and treated with open contempt. And the response from the American side was to yell, "Let's go," and scramble out in what witnesses described as resembling a rugby scrum. That is what diminished American power looks like in practice. The situation is escalating rapidly and pressure is building behind the scenes in ways the public has not fully absorbed. Trump went to China carrying terrible poll numbers, hoping that a high-profile diplomatic scene alongside Xi Jinping would generate the appearance of strength that has been steadily draining from his presidency. Instead, he returned more weakened than when he left. And the rest of the world is watching. America's allies are watching. America's adversaries are watching. And the emerging consensus among friend and foe alike is that while this administration occupies the White House, the United States can be engaged on surface-level terms without substantive concession. Washington's leverage is being discounted in real time. The strategic warning here is stark. As long as the Hong Kong financial network sustaining Iran remains intact, the oil traders, the arms brokers, the LLC money laundering operations, the conflict in the region will continue to metastasize. China is not going to volunteer to dismantle a system that is costing it very little and delivering enormous strategic benefit. They are tying down American military resources, degrading American credibility, and watching Washington absorb the political costs of an unwinnable war, all while their Hong Kong intermediaries quietly keep the machinery running. The only path to changing that equation is aggressive, sustained financial enforcement targeting the specific entities making it possible. And that requires a level of diplomatic and institutional seriousness that this administration has not demonstrated. Instead, America sent its president to Beijing with a delegation of technology executives, received a snub from the moment he stepped off the plane, participated in chaotic scenes that would be unimaginable in any competent diplomatic framework, resolved nothing, and flew home to declare success. The gap between what is being said and what actually happened is not just politically dangerous, it is strategically dangerous. Because decisions get made based on assessments. If the assessment is that Beijing was engaged and the trip was productive, then the real problem, China's active financial sponsorship of the forces killing Americans, goes unaddressed for another cycle. And the Iran conflict grinds forward. And the Hong Kong money network keeps running. And the drones keep coming. And nothing changes except the body count. This is the reality that deserves urgent public attention. Not the photo opportunities, not the handshakes, not the carefully staged moments on a podium. The question that matters is simple. Did the United States use this meeting to force a meaningful change in Chinese behavior on the issues that are directly costing American lives? The answer, based on everything that has come out of Beijing, is an unambiguous no. And in geopolitics, a no of that magnitude does not hold steady. It compounds. The dynamic shifts further. The adversary grows more confident. The leverage erodes a little more, and the next conversation becomes harder than the last. The world is in a more dangerous moment than most people are prepared to acknowledge. And right now, the country that is supposed to be leading the free world just returned from its most important diplomatic meeting of the year, having achieved nothing, while the network funding a war against its own soldiers operates without serious interruption. That is where things stand. And you need to be paying attention, because the next escalation is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when.